Filibuster receives sponsorship from the Ehrlich Law Office, Discrimination, Wage, and Litigation Solutions for Northern Virginia and the District of Columbia. They want you to know that your rights matter. You deserve to be free from harassment, and you deserve to work. They cover workplace discrimination and wage theft, non-competition and non-solicitation litigation, civil rights, takings and disability, and a lot more. For a free consultation, go to ehrlichlawoffice.com/filibuster.
I gotta start the show by complaining about something that has been driving me nuts since I saw it. And it's actually the Atlanta United tifo that they put on national TV before beating Charlotte.
That tifo is iffy for a couple reasons, honestly.
Yes, it has a few different things. There are some funny, like, kind of comedic things. There's a certain angle of hip posture that I think has to be laughed at more than anything.
The placement of MLS Cup in relation to the subject behind it.
All of that, I'm sure people have had and will have a good laugh at. But to me, like, this is a billionaire. Like, the tifo is of Arthur Blank, the multi-billionaire owner of Atlanta United. And yes, he is one of the more well-liked owners around MLS. I think most teams' fan bases would like to have Arthur Blank. The combination of resources and willingness to spend those resources on the team. But, like, do you need to make a tifo for a billionaire? This is already a billionaire. The act of being a billionaire is itself vulgar, and I feel like morally irredeemable. So is that the person that you want to then spend, like, days painting it? Because, like, making a tifo is hard work.
It's a commitment.
Like, if you've been following some of the DC fans this year, they've been tweeting out their tifo painting. I've been trying to retweet them when I see them. So if you're listening to the show and you're involved in that, feel free to tag me on those, because I'm glad to share, because I know you guys need all hands on deck.
Because they're days-long projects.
Yeah, it's real work. I know this is one of the many things with American soccer that I think people who haven't done it before tend to think it's not that hard, and then when you get there, it's like, oh, this is actually very hard. But I also want to shout out DC fans, because I don't think we're ever going to see, at least with the fan base as it is comprised today, a gigantic tifo dedicated to not just a billionaire owner of the team, but literally any billionaire. Maybe like a fictional billionaire. Like, I could conceive of a
Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah, a Scrooge McDuck tifo at a DC United game happening before an actual living human being billionaire tifo, which is good, because Scrooge McDuck is inherently funny. He is a Scottish duck who tries to swim in gold coins and succeeds at swimming through gold coins.
Right. Now, what I want to see, and if this happens, then I love it, because now I've talked myself into it in my head very quickly. I want to see this, a parody of Atlanta's tifo, because their tifo was it was Arthur Blank wearing a shirt that said "We are that city," and it had their 4 trophies
right
in front of it. And it was mocking Charlotte, who have existed for all of 2 games at that point, for not having won any trophies.
For not having won anything yet.
Which,
they've just gotten here.
I understand, saying you're new here, you have no history, but saying you haven't won anything in your 2 games, that's I think it says more about you than it does about them. And yes. I actually love Atlanta's fans, unironically. I think like, they are big and annoying, and they've earned being big and annoying, and they should remain big and annoying, because that's who they are, and it's awesome. DC United used to be like that, and I want that again. And now what I want is a parody of that tifo with Scrooge McDuck wearing a DC United kit, saying, with the 14 trophies lined up in front of him. And he's not wearing pants because he's Scrooge McDuck, so it makes the placement of the trophies even funnier.
Okay.
So
I like where
this
you're
is.
going with this. I was kind of also thinking of the fact that Atlanta is bragging about having 4 trophies in what's now year 5 for them. At DC entered year 5 with 8 trophies. So yeah. I feel like we still have the one era where doing this to everybody was like justifiable. And so I think still justifiable.
Yeah.
Maybe
I think I
maybe
misspoke. I
save
think I
this one
said
for
14 trophies when I meant 13 for DC United, but that's
May-
still a lot more than 4.
maybe you wait for Atlanta to come to town.
Yeah, that's when it would
so,
have to be.
Which is actually kind of coming up, though there's a inexplicable international break. Thanks a lot, FIFA. But this is only a complaint about one thing. I'll save FIFA for later. Don't make Tifo for billionaires. They haven't earned it. Their actions justify criticism only and not veneration. Don't do this to yourselves.
Hey, welcome in. This is Filibuster, the Black and Red United and Tifo Thoughts podcast.
I thought you were going to say Eat the Rich podcast.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm Adam Taylor. He's Jason Anderson. Ben Bromley has no voice right now, and because podcasting is an audio medium, he decided not to try to press his luck and signal his thoughts through the video call that we're on. He decided discretion was the better part of valor and took the week off. This week we are talking about DC United's unfortunate 2-0 loss to the Chicago Fire at an incredibly cold and wet and miserable Audi Field. Later in the week, we will have a preview of DC United's visit up to Toronto with Kristen Knowles. You can watch that one Saturday, 3 p.m. on NBC Sports Washington, Telexitos, DCUnited.com, or ESPN Plus, and you can listen to it on 104.7 Wonk FM or the iHeartRadio app in Spanish there too, which is good. More bilingual broadcasting, says I. Before we do anything else, though, Jason, what are you drinking?
I have a City State Lost Laws Pilsner. I went out and bought beer knowing that I wanted to have some spicy food. I usually want a Pilsner with spicy food. And sure enough, tonight I had pepperoni pizza, and I'm now on my second Lost Laws Pilsner. It's quite good.
It is.
City State, very close to Adam's home. DC United fan Ben Mailer. I don't know if he's listening, but if he is, I believe is still doing the graphic design for them. So keeping it close to home. And the beer is legit good. It's not just a buying it as a favor to anyone. It's just good beer.
Yeah, their space is cool too. It's right there next to the train tracks, accessible by the Met Branch Trail, so you can literally bike to the brewery.
Very nice.
And it's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. I've got something from an even smaller brewery called My Friend Pete, who's a pretty talented home brewer who has no interest in going commercial.
Just one Pete, though. We're not talking about Pete and Pete.
No, it is one Pete. He's not a redhead. He has no association with Artie, the strongest man in the world. I don't know if he has anyone named Ellen in his life.
Which Pete is he more similar to?
It's got to be Little Pete. He's much more nonsensical drama than relationship drama.
Okay.
In my almost 20 years of knowing him. But he last weekend, when the weather was nice, had a Kick the Kegs party so that he would have space for the new beer he was brewing and sent us home with a couple of bottles of something else. So in my fridge, I have a Russian Imperial Stout that I'm saving because it's a very big beer, being an Imperial Stout. And instead, I'm drinking the blueberry sour blackberry sour that he gave me, and it's quite good. It's a tasty little sour.
Nice.
So I'm a fan. You can't buy this beer though. So
I was going to say, go get yourself some by finding which Pete we're talking about.
Yeah.
Befriending him until he gives you some beer.
Yeah. Pete's a good dude. You should befriend Pete.
Yeah.
Friends of Pete, the podcast right here.
God, we're really going hard on the 90s references. A Rentals reference, just after an Adventures of Pete and Pete reference. Good luck, younger listeners.
Gen Z, just skip this one. You're not going to enjoy it.
Look up the Adventures of Pete and Pete and look up the Rentals. These are not like Limp Bizkit terrible 90s memories. These are things that were actually pretty good.
DC United's perfect start to the 2022 season was frozen in its tracks Saturday night in what was almost certainly the most unpleasant conditions for a game in Audi Field's short history. Chicago took advantage of a first half deflected through ball, I think is how I'm going to characterize that, to take a lead, and then added a late insurance goal to walk out 2-0 winners. DC United conceded a goal, lost a game, both for the first time this season. First question I got to ask, Jason, have you thawed out yet?
I eventually got it together. I got home, I ate some fast food, and slowly but surely got myself there. I brought, this is the press box life that I'm privileged enough to lead. Not only was I protected from the wind by glass, though I will say one of the glass panels of the press box, the building has settled, and it doesn't want to. There's a little lock on there, and the lock doesn't want to reach into the space it needs to recess into to hold it in place. And the wind gusts were actually making it fly like flat back and forth.
Oh wow!
So yeah, that was the kind of night it was at Audi Field. But yeah, definitely thawed out. Definitely had my like fingers exposed briefly while walking to my car, and noticed that my like just the finger area was turning like beet red from just the cold, because it got worse is the thing. Like if you were at this game, it ended, you hustled to your car because you didn't want to be miserably cold anymore. It got worse. Like Audi Field got windier and colder in like the hour and a half I was there doing work and heading out. It was much worse afterwards, which is stupid. It was already stupid cold during the game. The fact that it got worse is just morally incorrect on the part of Mother Nature, I think.
Yes. I ended up missing this game, but what I remember from my undergrad at Purdue is when the weather got below 20 degrees Fahrenheit was when the only way I could survive outside was muttering obscenities as I walked, completely bundled up and everything. Just it was just too cold to exist without cursing.
I will say there were probably, I don't know, they didn't announce it. They've kind of stopped. I think MLS wide, they've kind of stopped telling you the attendance unless you really seek it out. I would say there were probably about 4,000 to 5,000 people there, which is more than I thought, because of the fact that we had the threat of snow, slush, etc. I know the roads were clear, I think, because people were like, the roads might not be in good shape, so I'm going to stay home instead. So my drive in was actually very easy because everyone was just home being warm. But yeah, it was not a good night to do sports. I think that's a fair statement. If you heard from the post-game press conference, Losada mentioned that the grass was long. You probably noticed it from the way the ball was running. The reason the grass was long, I found out from the team, is that the time of day that would have gone to mowing the field was instead allotted to snow removal. They could not get the snow removed from the field in a fast enough fashion to then cut the grass, so they just had to not do it. So yeah, that
explains a lot of under-hit passes.
Yes, because it wasn't just the wind, which is what your first instinct might be, was that the wind was so strong that even a ball on the ground.
My first instinct for some of it was Adrian Perez underhit that pass.
Sure.
Because he did it a lot.
He did. But no, the grass was long. They didn't get it cut because they were busy removing snow. And I guess credit to the organization, because they had 2 different games in 2 different locations that are very far apart to get fields cleared in time to play, and they managed to get both of those games played. Loudoun got their game played as well. They actually, if we want to expand out a little further, there was a 3rd game to be played on DC United property. The Spirit did not play their preseason game because ultimately, I think they had 6 people trying to shovel the field clear, and at a certain point it was like, this is a lost cause. Like the start time is going to come and we're not going to have like 50% of the job done, so we're going to give up on this. So DC, they played with the orange ball, though I don't think it was necessary. I think it was a little silly because there wasn't snow on the field, nor was there snow falling, but it is fun. I think it's a fun departure, but the game itself, not super fun, though. I don't know. Adam, I don't know how you felt about this. I didn't think that this deserved to go down as a loss. I don't think they deserved to win, but I don't think they really deserved to lose either.
No, I think it was some of the good fortune that we were riding in those first 2 games just fell against it in this one. Because that first goal, like, if Brad Smith hits it anyway but where he did, and he wasn't really in control of where it went, just ricocheted off of him as he's running, trying to get his body turned right, and it just happened to fall exactly the wrong way for DC United, and there's nothing Bill Hamid can do at that point.
Yeah.
It's just you hope the attacker messes it up, and he didn't. And then the second goal comes from DC United pushing everybody up and being disorganized, and that happens when you're down in the 80th minute trying to push and push and push in conditions like this, and it just didn't happen. But like, there weren't a ton of other big chances for Chicago either. Like, I think DC United actually had more expected goals in this one.
They did,
and also had a better goals added from American Soccer Analysis, both on attack and defense. So it's not like they were dominant or anything. I'm not Caleb Porter out here saying, you know, this game we lost, we should have won 4-0. Like, that would be ridiculous. But I think, a scoreless draw is probably what this game deserved. And given Chicago, that makes sense.
Yeah. And, you know, I can't blame Chicago for showing up to play very structured soccer and look to hit on the break. They are trying, after years of not having their feet under them, to have their feet under them a little bit. And you can't blame them for it. They've got 3 shutouts. And to be fair to them, DC, a lot of the times DC looked dangerous, it didn't end in a chance. It was the threat of danger, not actual danger. Or you had, you know, a crowd of people at one point. You know, Slonina gets dumped into the net at one point by a herd of men crashing into him. You know, foul's going to get called there 99% of the time, and that's exactly what happened. It was stuff like that where it's like, you know, you kind of expect something to happen. You kind of lean forward in your seat a little bit, but no actual thing came out of it. There wasn't the like, oh, he just missed the chance. It was a lot of almost there. And, you know, to a certain extent, Chicago kind of invites that feeling. There's a little bit of Ben Olsen, DC United about Chicago right now, where they will concede a lot of the ball. DC had 55% of possession, which, given their proclivity to go direct, is fairly high for them. But you also see things like DC United took 7 shots that got blocked. It was a lot of, you know, this is an old, like, 2015 DC United thing of, like, leading the league in blocked shots. Not a lot of fun.
Put bodies in front of the goal.
But the ball, like, if you keep blocking the ball probably isn't going to go in goal. That's how physics work. And that's what Chicago did. They just kept having a herd of guys in the middle, in the goal mouth, and DC didn't have the tools to unlock it. And that's kind of the dynamic of the game.
Yeah, and Gaga Slonina made one good reaction save early on an Ola Kamara header that came off of a deflected Edison Flores shot, and that was really kind of all he had to do for most of the game.
And you know, the thing there was, like, Kamara had to jump up and head that early, so he couldn't power it. Yeah. So he ended up having to try and improvise by, like, trying to pop it up and over Slonina, who also read the situation. It was like, oh, he's going to try and go over me because he can't snap it down. And so it ended up not being all that difficult of a stop because he made the read correctly. But yeah, it was a lot of that where it was almost dangerous and almost a chance, but not an actual chance. And so you get, you know, a shot map where a lot of DC shots are in the box, but what you're missing in the context of is how many white shirts are between that shot and the goal. And it's probably like 4 or 6 or 10. So yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of the way of the world for DC right now, that if you're not one of the more talented or more dogmatic teams in the league right now, why would you come to Audi Field and try and play an open game? Because Charlotte came in and didn't play an open game. And yes, DC won that game 3-0, but everyone that saw it agreed that 3-0 was
It was
not a fair
closer than that.
indication.
Just like
And
2-0 wasn't a fair indication here, but
right.
yeah, DC United's not breaking you down right now.
Yeah. And so, if you're Atlanta in a couple of weeks, I think Atlanta's fairly pragmatic right now, and Joseph Martinez doesn't look that explosive. Did I say 2 weeks? I mean, in April at some point, because that's the international break. But yeah, when Atlanta comes up here, I do not expect them to play a wide open game. I expect them to play on the counter, because that's kind of the challenge you leave for I don't think TFC is going to do that. We'll talk about that in our other episode, but yeah, I think DC's got a real problem here, and it's that there is an avenue to beat DC as they are comprised right now, because they don't have they don't have a dribbler. I wrote about this on the site. That second dribbler, they've got Andy Nahar. Andy Nahar gave easily the two moments in this game that I think got people excited were both Andy Nahar little moments of skill. The little flick he had on Fabian Herbers to sort of Herbers was running in to pressure him, and he just gave it the pop the ball up over him a little bit and ran past him. So Nahar is great, but you need like a second person somewhere in the lineup to provide,
especially one a little bit further up the field, because Nahar is not really gonna. He only has so many chances to get up the field and dribble to create chaos, and it's always going to be in no wider than the half space.
Right.
And you don't have anyone out wide that can just completely break open a defense by beating a man on the dribble. I think the next best dribbler we have is probably Sofian Jafal at this point.
And he's more of a like invite crowds and dribble out of it so that you can move the ball along.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be circulation, not which can be valuable, but it's not going to completely unbalance a defense the way Kevin Paredes could do it.
Right. And this is, a thing that it's not like I can't say that Losada is making the bad choice in not fielding somebody to solve that problem. That person isn't on the team. That he does not have that player at his disposal right now. So yeah, they're missing that, and they're missing a little sharpness off the ball. That is something that I do think that's not one that it's any particular player needs to be started. It's nothing like that. I think they made the right choice. We talked about this last week with Kamara or Estrada. I think Losada made the right choice in going with Kamara instead. I think he's been the better player over the course of the games this year.
Yeah.
But you're still running into a problem where who else is helping disorganize the defense enough that Kamara is getting open. And right now the runs have not really been great, no matter who's been out there. This was, on one hand, Edison Flores taking a step forward in terms of activity level and intensity and involvement in the game, but still wasn't that much. And this was the step forward, or at least a step forward. Hopefully not the only one, but there's just some missing ingredients, and there's, it can be managed around with time, but it's not going to be easy. These are things that make the game easier, and they're missing. So DC has to do it the hard way.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because the missing ingredients are ingredients that they thought they had until into preseason. Because we've already mentioned Kevin Paredes. Those off the ball runs are something Paul Arriola, that's his game, is off the ball runs. He's really good at them, and he just never stops making them. And that's something United needs right now, because that Flores is going to look for the ball. He's not going to make that direct run to goal. And then in midfield, we have an injury, and our main ball winner and the guy who can transition attacks from your transition defense into attack really quickly in the middle of the field is been hurt with a groin injury. Maybe he's back for Toronto. We don't know. At this point, I would expect him to be back for that Atlanta game after the international break. But if we get him before that, even better.
It sounded like he was close for this game, so hopefully he can participate to some degree against TFC. Because that is something else that's missing, is that the other midfielders that have gotten time, they're all kind of more someone you would place next to the ball winner than they are the ball winner. And so you end up with, in this game, or in game one, there was a stretch of time, or no, not game one, game two, where Drew Skundrich is dropping between the center backs. That's not really his game. He's not that kind of guy that starts your possessions out. That's not really him. But DC needed somebody to do it. And that's kind of the story of Drew Skundrich's time with the team, is that they need someone to do it. And he's the guy for the job. I thought he and Jafal in this game did all right. I think Jafal on the ball was pretty good. But there's not a natural defensive midfielder, true six in the mix there. And it's no mistake that Chicago gets what turned out to be the game winner in a moment of transition. And it's Shaqiri gets into a space that maybe he doesn't have if Knaus is in the game, because Knaus has, one, he's just faster than the other players that are central midfielders on the team, but two, that long experience and that sense of where to be in that position defensively gets him closer to Shaqiri in that moment than I think anyone else on the team would have been able to. It is kind of a shame for Brad Smith that he got into position to defuse that counter, and then the ball comes off of him in the way that only made it like easier for Ivanov to do something with it. Because he did the thing that he needed to do. The hard part was like, I need to make this hard run to cut this specific angle off at the back post so that maybe Shaqiri doesn't make this pass and he holds play up and then we get more guys back, etc. And he does get into position and Shaqiri goes to make the pass and you're like, great, Smith is there. He's going to intercept this and this counter is going to go away. And instead, they get the easiest chance of the game that either team created. But yeah, the things that are missing are not easily dealt with. And it's kind of a frustrating situation to be in where you can't say, okay, this is what they need to do. There's a clear path towards fixing the problem. There is, but you can't fix it. You can't tell the coach to change something and it'll make Knaus feel faster.
You're waiting for Taxi to arrive, which hopefully is in the coming days or weeks.
It sounds like he wants to come.
It sounds like he's holding out at Rapid at this point. Like,
he's
calling in sick,
basically.
So the update there is not only are Rapid out of the Europa Conference League, but possibly even more importantly for them, the Austrian Bundesliga is into their second phase now, where after all 12 teams play each other twice, they split in half, and the top six play each other twice again, and the bottom half play each other twice again. The top half is a championship playoff, which RB Salzburg is going to win, running away. And then the bottom half is a relegation playoff. And thanks to apparently the replacement to Taxi, Rapid are in the top half. They finished fifth at the halfway point. And so they don't have to, or not the halfway point, the breaking point. And so they really have nothing to play for. They're not going to win the championship. They're not going to be relegated. They're kind of playing out the string. So why not let Taxi go? And I think that's what he thinks. That's what DC United obviously thinks. It's just a question of whether that'll actually happen before the primary transfer window closes in MLS the beginning of May or early May. And then after that, you got to wait till July because there's no other reinforcements coming before then. And DC United needs some reinforcements, especially in central midfield, because when Russell Knaus isn't out there, we're missing a lot. And, Taxi's going to make up for some deficits in the attack, but not necessarily all of them.
More in the Areola department.
Yes.
Like, he doesn't solve the dribbling thing, I don't think, but he does, or he's supposed to solve the movement and pressing and high energy aspect. That it's not that the guys that have been out there haven't been, like, Griffin Yow's working very hard. No, everyone's working hard.
Adrian Perez, what he does is work hard.
There's just a certain lack of sharpness that that final third, when things get difficult, when the spaces get tight, that they haven't been able to quite provide, and that's what Taxi's supposed to do. But that still leaves you missing the other ingredient, which I think is the more important one. To be frank. So that's the challenge for DC is, can you find someone? Can you even acquire someone who's worth acquiring with the amount of cap space that is available, which is, of course, a mystery because it's MLS. We don't know. We have to assume they've got some room. We have to assume they've got some general allocation money because we know about what went on with those trades and those transfers. But is that kind of player available before the summer window? Probably not. I don't expect the next dribbling asset to come to the team to arrive before then, which means you got to find a new way to play, because if it's going to be the wingbacks are creating most of the chances with crosses, you've got to find a way to feed them. And DC is not really feeding them very much right now either. And part of that is, it used to be Nahar, Gressel, and Areola combining because they're so good, combining to get Julian Gressel these crossing opportunities. But now you don't have Areola. You don't really have the familiarity on the left side. And you also, Birnbaum's just not going to, or in this game, Heinz, they aren't really super comfortable pushing up and being that extra man. So the combinations have been harder to come by. So the crosses aren't as common. And so it's kind of a domino effect that's happening with the attack, and the quality of chances is just not there yet.
Yeah, they're not coming from any angles,
right?
Really, and defenses are having time to get back, and the press isn't working either because teams are not playing into it by and large.
So far, I think TFC is going to, because Bob Bradley is very dogmatic about wanting to keep the ball, but it'll be a first for the season.
But last year, when DC United were playing well, they were able to. They didn't have to rely on the press and the press only. Whereas right now, that seems like the only option, just because they're not able to move the ball quickly enough or cleanly enough. Because I think some of that is beyond the dribbling aspect. Drew Skundrich isn't the cleanest ball in the player. Adrian Perez isn't the cleanest player on the ball, and so just you can't move the ball quite as quickly. Edison Flores has been hesitant when he got the ball. You saw it on the shot that led to Ola Kamara's chance. Is he just sat on the ball and waited for a run to develop, and Paul Areola's not there. The run didn't develop, so he had to take a shot basically. We don't have players getting to the end line and doing those cutback crosses, which are basically the highest leverage play you can make in the game, is that cutback from the end line. It's just they're not creating the kinds of chances that lead to lots of goals.
I want to throw in here, I'm looking at FBref as we're talking about this, and it does kind of remind me that as a reminder to all of us, I think, of how far DC came last year. This is still a team that is currently sitting tied for 11th in expected goals per FBref's metric, which I believe is Opta. So they're pulling the same data as MLS Soccer. So tied for 11th in MLS after this game. It's not like, 2020 MLS is back, DC United, where they had like 3 scoring chances for the entire tournament. It has been, down from last year. Certainly we're used to being elite in this department, and now not so much. But not so much doesn't mean like atrocious. It doesn't mean that these games have been hopeless.
Top half of the league.
Yeah,
but
it's just not what we're used to. And I don't know. I don't know what the approach here is from Losada. It's kind of the first time he's been tested in this department as to, do you accept for the time being that maybe you're only a upper middle class MLS team in terms of attack creation, and so you need to be high end defensive and focused on that department so that you're winning 1-0 like we saw early last year, where DC was kind of, the idea of risk avoidance came up a few times, and they were trying to make sure that, while they're getting up to speed on the pressing stuff and the attacking principles, to at least not give anything away. That might be where this has to go for until the summer, quite frankly, because if this team can't just go out and score a ton of goals, they can't play the open soccer we saw last year without taking a major risk of losing a bunch of shootouts because you don't have the firepower that the other teams have. So that might be the direction DC's headed in. And if they are heading that direction, then they probably need to shore up the defending, because that has been actually, that's more not down near the bottom, but definitely not as good as last year. I think their expected goals, their difference is negative 0.5. They've given up 4.8 expected goals after 3 games. Not very good. Not terrible, but not very good.
Not the level that we need.
Right. If you can't score, then that has to be you have to be pretty high up in that category to get by. You have to be doing what Chicago's doing on this department. So DC is kind of stuck in the middle, and that's not a fun place to be right now.
Yeah. So the changes aren't obvious. That they, you got to get Russell Knaus back, and players got to play better. I think we probably see Griffin Yao or someone with a little more attacking spark than Adrian Perez. I think his selection was down a little bit to Chicago's combativeness and knowing that you needed someone to get in there and battle with them, and also the conditions. Just a direct player who will run and run and run, and in those conditions, maybe that helps. I don't know. He didn't impress me. I know he underhit a lot of passes. Some of that's on the grass. Sure. Some of it is
you do have to adjust at
him not adjusting. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he also wasn't the only culprit there.
No.
And especially with the need to get into the attack, I want to see more attacking skill up there.
A little more urgency.
Yeah, from Losada, from players
right, which is Griffin Yao's, kind of his strong suit, is the insistence that he has that something happened. There's not a lot of patience there. And I'll throw in, if we're going to talk about that spot as between the two of them, Griffin Yao has had some success against TFC over the years. Maybe some of it is a weird fluke of timing, but he has done well against TFC, and maybe there's a little bit more of that in there. But yeah, I'm kind of inclined to agree that I don't know if he's going to solve either of the problems we've talked about, but one thing he does bring to the table is a certain scrappiness that if the ball's going to be pinging around in the box, Griffin Yao is the kind of guy that tends to get on those. And so maybe that scrappiness, that in just that instinct for the loose ball or turning the shot that gets deflected into a goal rather than one that goes wide, maybe there's something to that. Because this is a DC team that you mentioned that early chance from Kamara, and they had an early chance in the game before this. They had an early chance against Charlotte. If they get those to fall, I think these games get a lot easier. I think Chicago in particular, if you score early on them and they have to open up, the game is much easier for DC right now. So some of it is they just need to find a way through earlier in games and get the other team to have to open up, because then I think DC is going to start finding the game. It's going to be a lot easier for them to do. I said earlier, they kind of have to do it the hard way. If you can get the other team to open up, it's not that difficult a path to tread anymore. You're going to start finding more space, more room for the wing backs to run, more freedom when the forwards are running onto those cutbacks and crosses.
More opportunities to press potentially too. Like we saw against Charlotte, the press. Yeah. In that first game, the press didn't really get going until late when Charlotte were trying to push to get something.
And they ran out of gas, which Losada talked a lot about, the fact that the fitness side of the game really helped them kind of squelch Charlotte at the end, which is, all that's well and good, but you've got to find that breakthrough, and it can't be, the game settles into a rhythm that first half hour, and this DC team last year needed those early goals. And this year they need them more, much more. So
the system works better with an early goal. And
I mean, to be fair,
most systems
does. But no, I think there is something to maybe taking the gamble of the player that is more high risk, which would be Yao in this case. Taking that risk early. I think I've talked on the podcast a few times about my belief that if you have a player who is only half an hour or 45 minutes, especially if they're an attacking player, it would be better to front load their minutes and just be upfront with everyone and say, like, listen, our playmaker can only play half an hour. He doesn't have the legs to do any more than that. We're going to try and use that half an hour to get the lead and maybe get a second goal. We're going to push now rather than need to push later. Because if our push doesn't succeed up front, we've still got avenues to go and win the game. Whereas if it's the end of the game and the other team is up, then it's like, well, if our push doesn't work, then the game's over. We've lost. There's nowhere to go from there. So yeah, I would endorse that thought process in bringing someone like Yao back into the lineup. And I do think, as to whether DC might, fiddle with the formation again on the road, I don't think against TFC you need to. I think you need to put your best pressing lineup on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that still seems like a team playing 3 up front rather than 2 with an attacking midfielder or anything like that. I think they need to stick with 3 up front and, get Yao in there. Maybe even consider some of these guys that went to Loudoun and didn't just win, but like they outplayed Indy.
They put Indy off the field. They played them completely out of the building.
I want to say I can't remember off the top of my head. I haven't watched that game yet, but I did see a stat that one of Loudoun's defenders had 116 pass attempts, to give you an idea of how much they had the ball.
Wow.
So in general, you look at Ted Kudi-Pietro, who got the assist on the goal. Kimarni Smith got the goal.
Birthday boy Kimarni Smith with the goal.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
the assist wasn't just like he happened to have the pass before it. He got the ball in his own half, ran past 4 or 5 defenders, and then played a perfect ball into Kimarni Smith's stride. First time, I think it was left-footed, upper V, just overpowered the keeper. It was a great play from both of them.
Now I don't know exact, because like I said, I kind of expect Canals to be involved, so that gives you 20, assuming no injuries. Plus Nyman comes back off suspension, so now you've got 21 vying for 20. But part of the thing lately is that DC's bench has been very defender heavy. Usually one more defender than they actually need to get through the game. Out of necessity, it's been like, well, these are the guys that are healthy. If you offered me the chance to add someone like Kudi-Pietro, who has that Griffin Yao insistence, that ability to sort of make things happen through sheer effort and desire, to go with good technical skill, like you just said, Adam. The assist was not just a guy working hard. Maybe that's worth mixing in right now, just to give DC that extra wild card to play off the bench, where it's not, if they need to add an attacker, they're bringing in Chris Odoyachem and moving Andy Nahar out of the back, which isn't really adding an attacker. It's just moving an attack-minded guy further forward. It's not the same thing. I think that is something that is maybe worth considering, though I know Kudi-Pietro had an injury, so there's, this might have partially just been to get him some minutes in a lower consequence environment, but you got to start considering something. And there aren't too many other places to turn as well. Like it's not like there are many options and I'm picking one out of a hat. It's like, well, there are like 3 or 4 options and you got to do something. Because we saw at the end of this game, DC fielding 3 number 9s at the same time. Not really conducive. I mean, it's
that
not really
was recognition of the conditions too. Just boot it forward and let them try to work.
Right. Cause some chaos up there and see if a forward can be the one getting a shot away. Which is all well and good.
It's better than moving Steven Birnbaum up top with no other ideas.
And it's good having Nigel Robertha available. He's a different dynamic up front, but at the same time, you do kind of, if you've got 3 number 9s up there, you're losing a lot of subtlety because they're number 9s and they're not false 9s. They're not, if
remember,
Ola
Jason,
Kamara,
subtext is for cowards.
Yes, absolutely. If Ola Kamara is your number 9 who is looking to check off and connect, it's like, well, something's gone wrong here because that's not him. Like we're misusing him as well. I would at least consider it just to give DC a little something they don't have right now. Because that is something that's, whether it's maybe just winning free kicks, to go back to Yao, that's another thing he's been good at, is getting fouled, because DC didn't create too many good free kicks in this game either.
That's something those dribblers help you with too. Is they win fouls.
Paredes was the funny thing about Paredes last year is I don't have the numbers in front of me. His foul, the number of times he was fouled in a game per 90 or whatever wasn't super high. It's just that it probably feels higher than it was because of where he was getting fouled. He was getting fouled in spots where the free kick would be dangerous, and you're more likely to remember who won the foul when you get a good free kick opportunity rather than one that's like at midfield near the touchline. That's not a very good free kick opportunity.
Yeah. Although that's where Chicago's first goal came from, was a phantom foul, frankly. Ola Kamara got fouled and played through it and got whistled for a foul. And then that free kick somehow turns into the chance that led to Chicago's first goal. And now I'm mad about it all over again.
Yeah, I mean, that's MLS. To a certain extent, you just have to be prepared that you're going to have a foul that doesn't go called that is going to be consequential. And I do recall there being like a very brief, the game didn't kick off immediately. And I have half a mind of like, did VAR say like, well, let's like informally, I mean, they're supposed to, but maybe I hope that they took at least a glance at that one. And it wasn't like, let's look at what happened for Chicago on their goal. Let's look what happened, how they won the ball. But in any case,
but because I don't think they could overturn that because it was not a part of that play. It was a dead ball.
Right.
And that's it. Like what created the dead ball is not reviewable at that point. So I'm not, I mean, DC United has to defend it. Like they have to do better, not let that chance develop the way it did, but it's still, it sticks in my craw, you know?
Oh yeah.
Especially it's not the first time. Like that's been a theme this year. Brad Smith fights through something and then gets called for a foul, even though he got fouled multiple times and fought through it and then gets whistled for nonsense. It seems to be happening once or twice a game. And it's, you know, it's not any one referee. It's just something that I hope is not turning into a real pattern. Yeah. Well, before I start, go ahead.
Yeah. I'll just say I pulled up the map of where DC's fouls, where they won their fouls in this game, and there's only 4 of them that are in dangerous positions. Most of the rest of them are at midfield, or even Brennan Hines got fouled inside DC's own box at one point. But yeah, like 4 of the 15, I think it is 4 of the 15 or 4 of the 14 are dangerous. And if DC is going to be a team that needs to lean on set piece creativity, that's fine. That got them a penalty kick in Cincinnati, which got them a win. Though that wasn't that. I guess that's not really free kick creativity so much as, look, Steve Birnbaum's pretty big. Kick the ball towards him and see if it happens.
Maybe Jeff Cameron throws his arm out in a weird way.
Yeah. But yeah, they are going to have to find a way to manufacture some more free kicks or be a little sharper on corners, because I don't think they were particularly threatening on corner kicks in this game. Some of that was Chicago. They deserve some credit, and DC was dedicating resources to this. If you go ahead and if you want to pause a corner kick in this game to see where DC's players are, Bill Hamid is inside the center circle. They have 3 guys lingering outside the box. Gressel's taking the corner, and everyone else is in the area. Everyone is within 30 yards of goal except for Bill Hamid. So they're really aggressively, taking a chance. They're taking a big risk on this. And I think it's probably because they know that this is, for the time being, it's a higher priority chance for them than it normally would be.
Right.
Because of what's lacking. But at the same time, the execution has to be a little better to turn that risk into something worthwhile.
Well, we'll see if DC United can get it right in Toronto. Be sure to tune in later this week for our interview with Kristen Knowles from the Vocal Minority podcast. If you are a Patreon supporter, patreon.com/filibuster, you can listen to it right now over there at that website, because we love our patrons, we love our supporters, and we like to give you perks like early access to those episodes. For everyone else, find our written content at blackandredunited.com. On Twitter, the website is blackandredu. This here podcast is at Filibuster DCU. Jason is at Jason DC Soccer. I am at 202 AMT. Because Ben refused to read my Twitter off last week, I am refusing to read his off right now.
Yes.
Suck it, Ben. Send your emails to filibusterpodcast@gmail.com. Download, subscribe, good ratings and written reviews wherever you get your podcasts. Tell a friend about the show. Word of mouth has always been and will always be the best form of advertising. For Jason and the absent Ben, I'm Adam. We'll talk to you again real soon. Say goodbye, Jason.
Eat the rich.